Okay, we're live. We're live. We're live. Because we had complaints about the sound. Right. Here we are. And the reason that we're late on this morning, because it's 8:35, is because we've been farting around with passwords. Passwords. For God's sake, if you're so bloody clever, you people with IT, find a new way an easier way of us getting into what we want out of this, not a bloody password. Please. No, I don't say please. Get on with it and do it. You're already all boasting about what you can do, what you can't. You can't even sort out the password issue. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, right. I feel much better now. Here we go. Right. Okay. What are we? Oh, we're all sixes and sevens. We're all sixes and sevens. We are indeed. There we go. We got the newspaper headlines up. All right. Good morning. And it's Mirador Television, as you might have guessed, because no other television service would open up with a yelling and a shouting and a stomping of feet. And it is 8:36. 8:36 in the morning of the 12th day of September 2022. And today is the day that the Queen starts to lie in state in Scotland for 2 days before coming south to her final resting place and to lie in state at Westminster Abbey until next Monday, when I think the full funeral is to take place. And I think that's the day, isn't it? So 19th, yes, the 19th, which is the day that we will actually be given a day off so that we can look at the funeral. Now, I haven't actually read some of the stuff, so I'm going to ask Max to take a look. But I was told this morning as I came in on public transport, nearly empty buses, that the day will actually stand still, that all sorts of shops and businesses and facilities will close, and that nothing will happen on that day except the funeral. And incidentally, there is some suggestion that heads of state are going to be asked to travel to Westminster by bus because they can't handle all the official cars that would come. As somebody said, I can just see Joe Biden getting on the number 27 bus and saying, give me a 3 and tuppenny ticket to get to Westminster Abbey. That's an interesting dilemma. And of course, actually, just like us this morning, being thrown into it because these damn silly people that, who is it, Microsoft? Is it Apple? These damn silly people at Apple is that we were late this morning. They have no concept whatsoever of their users. And that is very typical of British business at the moment. But I must keep my voice down because it is a solemn day, a day when the Queen was brought to Holyrood House in Edinburgh last night with 8 soldiers from, I think it's the Company of Archers, carrying the coffin draped in the Royal Standard and left to go on, well, I suppose lying in state is public display today. So that's where we stand with that. On the day outside immediately, it's a nice day this morning so far. We can expect some scattered cloud, but it is going to get up to 24 degrees, no rain, and a modest breeze. It's the modest breeze that always bothers me whenever they say a modest breeze. It's enough to lift my hat off. So if you're going out and you've got a hat with a brim, be prepared to clutch at it from time to time, because that modest breeze can get very, very vexatious. Is that a word? Well, it can behave in a very odd way and knock you all over the place. Okay, where are we? We'll take a look at the papers now, because they're all a much of a muchness. The Metro is it has its entire front page with pictures of the Queen, or at least her coffin, draped in the Standard, and being carried into Holyrood House, and a very solemn occasion it is, and it was. I shouldn't say it is remarkable, because this Queen was a remarkable Queen. Not only did she rule for 70 years, but she ruled with panache and understanding and sympathy. Yes, they live a privileged life. Yes, they had their own way of doing things. Yes, they can be arrogant from time to time. But generally speaking, she was a good monarch. We've had good governance. And before all those people are going to say, let me point out to you that there are over 60 monarchies in the world, and that the constitutional monarchy on which we are based is, the local ones are the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. When did you last hear of them having trouble with their governments by insurrection or rioting or similar attacks upon their governance? When was the last time you heard any of those countries in trouble? Well, the fact of the matter is, you haven't. And it attests to the fact that the constitutional monarchy, as I have maintained throughout my entire life, the constitutional monarchy is the best form of government. And ours particularly follows what, and I'm guessing, I think about 400 BC, what Plato said in his Politics, is the very best form of governance is having a monarchy combined with an oligarchy, in other words, a second chamber, a House of Lords ruled by the few, and a democracy ruled by the people. What have we got? We have a monarchy, we have an oligarchy, and we've got a democracy. We have got the very best form of governance. And before all these people who stomp around, let's become a republic, is look at the republics. I can't count on the fingers of 27 hands how many republics with presidents have had assaults on their governance by either armies or people or groups, or for that matter, small organizations. And I say small, like the Nazis, because actually the Nazis were a small organization when they got cracking. So don't, if you've got an argument for changing it, then you better have a damn good argument. And don't use the argument is, well, the king did this or the queen did that, or look what they do in the House of Lords. The incumbent in these posts is a different issue to whether, in fact, the system is the best system. We have the best system. I'm the first to say, as you well know, 650 MPs, a plague on all their houses. Get rid of them. They're not fit for service. But that's because silly idiots have tampered with it. Ratios. You've got to have so many women. You've got to have so many gays. You've got to have so many blacks. Nobody bothers to say, hey, how about somebody who can do the job? So what have we got? We got 650 people who are there on spurious terms. And when the crises came, they were unable to do anything. And that's why we are facing a winter of discontent, a winter in which we will get cold, a winter in which any spare cash will go on heating. It goes back to those roots. And perhaps if we're going to learn anything, and all these inner workings, the people, the power brokers of the Conservative Party, and for that matter, the Labour Party, is go back to getting the very best. I don't give a damn whether the House of Commons has 650 homosexuals, blacks, as long as they can actually do the job. That's all I ask, that they can do the job. And this lot patently cannot. and that's why we're in so much trouble. Anyway, back to the papers and the funeral.
First one's the Metro.
So that was the Metro, yeah. The Financial Times is actually, I think it was you, wasn't it, Max, who asked on Friday, what's the Financial Times saying? And in fact, it wasn't up on the screen. And now this morning we've got the Financial Times. It has a similar photograph to many of the papers with the soldiers carrying the Queen's coffin draped in the Royal Standard as it goes into Holyrood House. But it says, and I'm glad to see that it's keeping an eye on other things, is Ukraine offensive makes significant gains. And from what I can gather, it would seem that the Russians were asleep at the switch, that their intelligence didn't say that the Ukrainians were amassing their troops in one particular part of the country in the northeast, and they suddenly let loose and pushed the Russians back. Apparently, to the extent where they went into mess halls and so on and still found food on the table because the people who were sitting there had to get up and get out very quickly. There's another interesting thing is that China emerges as the IMF's competition with $33 billion in rescue loans to debt-hit nations. And the article points out that there's a big difference between the IMF and the Chinese loans, and that is that the IMF asks for reform. It gives conditions, whereas China is just simply doling out the cash. Now, that wins, of course, the loyalty of the countries concerned, but it doesn't do much for the global economy, because if these countries don't reform, they will be a pariah, and they get themselves into mess after mess after mess. And that affects the global economy as a whole. So good for the FT. It covered all sorts of things on its front page. The I, the Queen's final journey begins. Do you know what those soldiers are, Max?
Scottish Royal Soldiers?
No, actually, I didn't know either. And I took a guess like you and got it totally wrong. Apparently, they are the regiment of archers. Bowmen. Bing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, we'll get the exact one, but the Guardian. Actually, it's got a little thing at the top. Part of us goes with her, and again, there's the picture of the coffin, and the Queen begins her final journey. But Russia launches revenge attacks as Ukraine offensive gathers pace. I'm not quite sure what they meant by the revenge attacks. And in trying to read the first paragraphs, it doesn't tell us much. Do you know what it is, Max? Do you know what the revenge attacks are?
I do not keep update on any of the Ukraine-Russia stuff.
Well, it has a big effect on us throughout the world, so it might be a good idea to keep an eye on it. The Mirror, the same picture, the final journey home. The Daily Telegraph, her last great journey. Same picture. The Daily Express, the Queen's saddest journey begins. The Daily Star, thousands line the streets to say goodbye to the Queen. Did you watch any of the television pictures over the weekend?
No.
Well, it was quite remarkable, the number of people accumulating in the outside Buckingham Palace, outside Holyrood, outside even still Balmoral. The flowers have been moved from in front of the palace into the Green Park. There is an outpouring of grief from the nation. Thousands and thousands have found their way down the Mall to Buckingham Palace. Thousands and thousands lined the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, leading to St. Giles Cathedral. And the feeling of loss for the Queen, and I have to say that I feel it too. because she has been an excellent head of state. Now, I said a moment ago I would defend the system, the constitutional monarchy, to the hilt. But sometimes these systems depend upon the incumbent. And in the past, we've had some pretty rotten monarchs. But this one, this queen, has been an exemplary monarch. She is said to be better read than any other leader in the world. And somebody was saying this morning, if you had a conversation with the Queen and she was conversing about your particular specialist subject, make sure that you boned up, because she probably would come armed, knowing more about it than you did. So a monarch to be proud of. The Times, final journey begins. And that is, what was that from the Times? Okay, that's broadly what the papers say. We are now into 8:50. So why don't we just take a little breather, as we often do, and get into our lovely path. Right, okay, here we are back. Now, I'm just going to take a pause because I started off this program by ranting and raving about passwords and so on and so forth. But now I have with me this morning our Max, Max the Herd, who is our regular host and correspondent for much of the week. He appears with Stuart Dolby on a Wednesday. The two of them lock horns within seconds of being on the air, which is just great stuff. I mean, it's like the World WWF wrestling. The two of them having a go at it, and then he's with Liza Page on Thursday, and Liza needs a little bit of reining in from time to time, so he's there with a little bit more conflict. But one of the things that he is of a generation that he understands computers. And I was just talking about, probably he has no sympathy for what I'm saying, but he said, on the contrary, he's having all sorts of problems with his own stuff and doesn't understand a lot of it. And he also thinks that there are problems. What are these problems, Max?
So what I'm having with at the moment is I can't log into my Filmora account, which is the editing software I use for Mirador. That's a big problem because I have lots of shows to edit. I can get in them just fine and edit. I just can't take anything out of there. It's saying I need to re-sign in, but when I try to use my email, it says wrong email. I use my other email, it says correct one, and then it's saying I used the wrong password. And then I try to I try to reset the password, and it says this is the same as a previous password, so you can't use it. It's just getting on my nerves. Then the verification codes won't send through properly. No,
that these verification codes are a bunch of crap. They really are.
Yeah.
So you support a certain amount of my rant. Is get with it.
Yes.
As an industry, it is very self-satisfied. I keep on reading. In fact, they take theatres, don't they? And they have all the top people from Microsoft and Apple and so on appearing to show what they've done next and how wonderful it is. A, I don't understand what the hell they're talking about, but B, they are letting their basics go. And as a consequence, they are losing a lot of sympathy amongst their client base. Would I be right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I can't go anywhere else.
No, exactly.
Well,
And that's where something has got to be done.
I'm with Microsoft right now. What if I change to Apple? It's going to be the exact same problem, probably even worse.
Yes.
Apple is notoriously bad.
To be quite honest with you, I don't know whether I'm using Microsoft or Apple half the time.
Are you using Apple?
Am I using
Apple phone, Apple iPad,
right?
HP computer, which is Microsoft.
Right.
So you do get some confusion.
As Forrest Gump said, they invested in a fruit company. Have you seen the movie from Forrest Gump? Well, it's very interesting. It's an interesting movie and a very controversial movie with Tom Hanks. But Forrest Gump is somebody with limited intelligence, but he keeps on making his way through life because he's a very decent bloke. And he goes to Vietnam and makes a couple of lifelong friends. And when they get out, he's left a few bob by his mother, I think, and his companion from the Vietnam War, he says, "Leave it with me, I'll invest it." And he said, now I'm very wealthy because he invested in a fruit company. And then they show the Apple logo. We're trying to, he had a hell of a week. He's not long out of college and he's now finding out what life is about. It's not sheltered at all. So we're trying hard to put a smile on his face this morning. He's humpy and grumpy, but he'll get out of it. Don't worry.
Yeah. It's been a rough week.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
And not least of which is, of course, nobody expected on Wednesday what was going to happen. And that has thrown a lot of things into confusion. So anyway, we've been through the pages, and we've given you the weather. But just in case, we'll give you the weather again, and we'll tell you that this is the 12th day of September in 2022, and what a year! What a year! Because this year undoubtedly has got to be one of the strangest years that we've had for a long time. I mean, we have staggered from crisis to crisis, totally unexpected.
Even last week, right? On Monday, we had Boris Johnson and the Queen. On Thursday, we had Liz Truss and the King.
Yes,
a lot has changed in the
absolutely
in politics.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot about the statement of succession and the coronation and so on and so forth. But our Constitution says that the moment the Queen expires, the next in line, which is Charles, becomes king. So the moment that she died, Charles was Charles III.
I'm seeing a lot of people saying he should, I'm not sure if abdicate is the right word, but hand his position down to William.
And what's their, why is the reason? What reason?
Well, first of all, William in general has a higher approval rating. Charles, I don't particularly like personally. He's very political. He's had a lot of scandals. I mean, from the monarchy perspective, it's supposed to be a Christian institution. He is not Christian particularly. He is an adulterer. He has been with many women whilst he was married. So he's had lots of controversies. He's currently a part of the World Economic Forum. So there's lots to say about him. And William would be a better fit, I think. Someone a bit younger, maybe.
So we should change from our present system of hierarchy to whether they're popular or not.
No, I just think Charles is bad because he's had so many controversies.
But he's only been king for 2 days.
I know. I'm not saying in those 2 days he's done all of that. I'm saying in his life he's had so many controversies.
And how many kings and queens would we not have if the question of fidelity was an issue?
I don't know.
It was actually, I mean, it's slightly apocryphal, but these things come out, is that when Charles was having trouble with Diana, as he went to his grandmother, the Queen Mother, and sort of poured his heart out, and she said, "But my dear, do what your ancestors have always done: take a mistress."
Really?
Yes. I mean, if you go back, I don't know that George VI had a mistress, but just about every other king and queen. And you do know, don't you, that across the road, which is now apartments, the Crown Hotel, that the Prince Regent was George the Fourth, used to take his mistresses, and that around the corner, which is now the town hall, was the Star Hotel, where he took a few more mistresses. And down the road in Southover Park, where we just went for Grange Park, Southover Grange Park, is that his people argue that it may well have been his illegal wife. Spent many an hour with him down there. So Lewes was a favorite trysting place for George IV, and particularly when he was Prince Regent. And if you go back amongst the others, one of the interesting things about Brighton Pavilion is that there are secret tunnels, so that the king or the Prince Regent could go down those tunnels and see his mistresses. And his staff would say, "Good night, sir," and close the door. And there he was in bed. And when they went in the morning, there he was in bed. But he hadn't. He'd been popped down the tunnel the houses are still there. Whether the tunnels are still there, I'm not absolutely sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just actually a world of naughtiness. But when you consider that probably, I think the figures when we were a moral country were still something like 50 to 55% of men managed to have something on the side. But now nobody cares anymore. You go down to Brighton, it's one of the most immoral towns anywhere in the world, and yet people flock there and love it. So, there are a few things I think that we would have to consider if we wanted to skip the succession. Yes, I've heard it mooted that William would be a better king and that it would be better. I think there was talk of the Queen abdicating in favor of William. But the fact is that the succession is the succession. That's our system. And it sometimes it pops up bad people. Sometimes it pops up good people.
Do you personally think William would be better?
No.
I
think William may well be a good king, but he's green around the gills. He's young. He hasn't had the experience that Charles has had. Now, whether Charles uses that experience to the good the way his mother did the jury is out. You may be asking me this question in 3 months' time, or 6 months' time, or a year's time, if in fact I last out that long. Is the same question, and I may have a quite different answer. But I think at this particular stage, we have to see what sort of monarch he will turn out to be. Now, as a Prince of Wales, he's been very controversial. Holistic medicine, the architecture question, talking to trees, his green credentials, many of which do not sit well with an establishment which ignores the global warming for greed. I mean, let's face it, and he says that's naughty and you shouldn't do it, and he's a nut. So let's give him a little bit of chance. And in fact, he was given cheers and so on, apparently, from the crowd over the weekend. And if he's got that goodwill, it will now be up to him as to how he uses that goodwill. Because you may well be right. It may be that in 2 months' time, that there is a growing clamor for him to step down in favor of William. I don't think he will. I think that he's wanted to be king for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if I had waited 76 years to be king, I would want to be king.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are we now? We're at 9:04, and we'll invite Suzanne along in a moment. But let's see what we've got on the stocks, and perhaps play you a little something that I wonder if we've got the thing about the. I don't think we've got it here, unfortunately, but I thought we might well have played the thing about battle and 1066. But anyway, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We are going to play you now our little program on the Jubilee. Because it gives you some idea of, we've got Jubilee or Jubilee 1. It gives you some idea of a little bit of the Queen's reign. So that's what we'll do just for a minute, and we'll be back with you in a little while. Well, how much of that, Max, are you aware of? Because some of those pictures there showed bombed out buildings. They showed kids playing football in the streets. I mean, is today's modern generation aware of what things were like in 1953 when the Queen took over?
No, not really. That's why I'm so interested to talk to people like you and Liza and find out what life used to be.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because Britain took a long time to recover from the Second World War. And of course, we were the frontline country to have taken the pasting. We were devastated. And then at the end of the war, they had something called the Marshall Plan. Basically, the Americans gave long-term loans, not expecting them to be returned, to a lot of the European countries, but not to us. We were left to fend for ourselves. And actually, I think that probably it was the making of this nation, is that we didn't go cap in hand to the United States or other money nations asking for help. Basically, we worked our way back to be what became an industrial society for a while, before really in the end of the 1970s, the beginning of the 1980s, we ceased to be an industrial power. And in fact, Margaret Thatcher sold off much of of our industrial base that was owned by the state, and also closed down those things which are not viable. And we became a financial services country. But some of those scenes there, I can remember as a little boy seeing all sorts of devastation, bombed out buildings, and the place is still not operating because of the damage, were quite the norm. But you know, the one thing I do quite clearly remember is going to the local shop and seeing outside a rusting machine that dispensed cigarettes and sweets, right? You put in your money and you pulled out a drawer and you got the cigarettes or you got the sweets. And I used to look at these things and think, oh, that was from a very civilized age. But the other thing, of course, was a huge military presence because the Americans didn't all go home very quickly. And we kept national service until 1953, I think. I think it was 1953, yeah. And I think it was later than that, 1956 perhaps. So there was a big military presence throughout the country. People in uniform were quite the norm. But that also, we got terribly excited and for some reason decided that the road network was the way that we would transport. So a guy called Beeching cut thousands and thousands of railway lines. Tram lines were ripped up, and now everybody wishes that we hadn't ripped them up.
Yeah,
tramways.
I looked at old photos of Brighton when my great granddad was around, when he was a kid, because that's where he was born, and there were tram tracks everywhere.
Absolutely, and we dug them all up, and
Why?
because the view of the day, the perceived wisdom of the day was that the trams had gone out of fashion. We weren't going to use trams anymore. The big problem, I think, was that policy decisions were made on looking into the future. But there was a BBC program which is called, and I can't remember what it's called, but basically what it did is it looked at the future and what the experts predicted were developments. And it's interesting, some of them came true, but 90% of what was predicted on this program it never did come true. It never grew to fruition. And unfortunately, our politicians, they weren't much better than they are today, drew up plans for all sorts of expansion based on what they thought was going to happen. And what they thought was going to happen, as often happens, is because we are driven by other forces than just what the human beings think, it didn't happen. So we were left having ripped up the tram system. And then because everybody, I mean, for instance, nobody, even in the 1950s, thought that everybody would own a car. It was only for the very wealthy. So the idea of where do we park, what sort of roads do we need, and so on and so forth, it wasn't taken into account. They more or less predicted slow growth.
When did your family first get a car?
Well, we had one as long as I can remember, but it was only a small one. Mind you, most of the cars were only small then anyway.
It was an Austin something.
It was an Austin 7, which was gifted to me by my grandfather, and a lovely little car it was, a sweet little thing. And I was sorry for its passing, but I went away to Canada, and it got a bit neglected, unfortunately. So when I came back, it was it had been in its death throes. But I mean, it wasn't in the greatest nick anyway. It would never have passed an MOT today. But then we didn't understand what MOTs were. Why test something? There are only a few of them on the road. Out for an afternoon spin on a Sunday. It's great stuff. Okay. Where are we? What time is it? It is 9:13, and today is. Have you got the list of what's going to happen today there?
Yes, I do.
Right. Tell us what's going to happen today.
So at 12:45 p.m., the King and Queen Consort arrive at Edinburgh Airport and travel to the Palace of Holyrood House, where Charles III inspects the Guard of Honor.
Right. Can you tell them?
Sorry,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah. Just paraphrase.
There's a well, there's a lot here. Give me a second.
Okay, well, it's going to be a very full day again, of course, and will be for the next week. So, any better idea of what's going to happen throughout the day?
No, not really.
Right, St Giles Cathedral. Is the Queen lying in state there already?
No, the coffin will be carried into the cathedral at 2:55 p.m.
Today. Ah, right. Okay. So we have another ceremony in which the coffin will arrive in St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh to lie in state.
And then at 3 p.m., the King attends the service and prays.
Right. So we've got a service surrounding the arrival of the coffin. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, it looks like it. Okay.
That's about it, really. It doesn't say that. I think. I'm not sure when she's going back to London.
I think she's there for 2 days, if I'm not mistaken, because they want to give the people of Scotland a chance to file past the coffin as she lies in state. I think she's lying in state in Scotland for a couple of days. Then she comes back and lies in state here until the funeral, which is a week today.
And it's going to be open casket.
Is it going to be an open casket?
I believe so. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure. I like looking at dead people.
No, the idea of an open casket funeral always freaks me out. I don't like it.
It does me a little bit too. I mean, they try to make them look as lifelike as possible. I'm not sure that is quite a good idea either. But let's accept the fact that that's the norm. It's only you and I that don't like that.
Well, in Scotland, it says that 325,000 people pay respect to the Queen where she lies.
In St Giles.
In St Giles.
Yeah, right.
So what it's going to be in London?
Oh, it'll be huge.
It'll be over 1 million.
Yeah. Oh, I would think. I mean, they have to, the logistics. Strange enough, one of the people, I wouldn't say he was a friend, but one of the people that I know at Westminster Abbey is the number 2 and in charge of logistics. So David will, Canon David will be very busy working out how to keep the crowds moving. And it's a real job, a real job. I mean, he performs his duties extremely efficiently, but every man is tested by a new situation. And of course, the thing is that nobody expected it. That's the point. Nobody expected her to die. It just happened very quickly. I mean, we sat here this day week, and it was the least on our list of things to talk about. Right, okay. Let's shall we see if we've got other interesting things to. Look, do you know something? Isn't it funny? One of the things that I do things and have done in the past, a little tongue in cheek, and one of our food tips has been hot buttered toast. So I did a little thing on hot buttered toast, and it's proved very popular. People have been clicking on it and saying, "Oh yeah, great idea, great idea." Basically just after the war, there was so little to put on a toast that hot buttered toast was considered to be a delicacy. So let's just give you our recommendation.
Murdo's food tip of the week: hot buttered toast. Have we forgotten how wonderful, simple, hot buttered toast can be? Ingredients simple: bread and butter. Hot buttered toast. Mirador's food tip of the week. Try it.
Now, I have to say that I do actually eat hot buttered toast myself, not every day, but occasionally. And it's sitting down with a mug of Ovaltine and a couple of slices of hot buttered toast it was the delicacy that I remember. And because nowadays we are urged to put this on it and that on it, and oh, this is marvelous for a sandwich, and this boosts the taste. Hot buttered toast is still a delicacy. It is still a good way of eating. So I would actually recommend to you that this is not so much fun as a good, solid recommendation. Hot buttered toast, right? And take away the misery.
Well done, the energy companies. They're full of bright ideas to help their customers. Now they've made power so expensive that for an average house such as this, you can't afford to heat it. So you don't need appliances such as this. But that means you also don't need a fridge, because you can keep your groceries cool and fresh without it. The house is cold enough. Well done, chaps.
Now, are we back? I hope so. We look back in the archives of Mirador, and one of the things I found is the way that we used to do the weather. So take a look at this. Now, nowadays, we don't do anything as sophisticated as that. We just tell you that today the high is going to be 24. The chances of rain don't increase beyond 4%, which means that it'd be very, very unfortunate if it should rain, and most unexpected. That there is a moderate breeze, which is enough to lift my hat off, but nonetheless helps to cool things down, because 24 is quite warm, and it's the temperatures that we've been experiencing during the hot streak. Is there anything else about? Well, yes. Yeah, so sorry, there is a little scattered cloud here and there, which will hide the sun from us for little periods of time. For the moment, looking out onto Lewes High Street, it's gorgeous out there. But that's how we deliver the weather to you now. Nothing as sophisticated as you just saw there. Okay, Mr. Max, have you found anything in the inside pages that might give us some
Yes,
port of thought?
I found Meghan Markle has gone up to not Balmoral. Where's the Queen at right now?
Holyrood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've gone up there, and so has Meghan Markle. And in the news that they were saying when the Queen died, they were the first. So they were the last to arrive and the first to leave.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it would appear that, albeit temporarily, is that William held out the what do we say, the hand of friendship to Harry, and which was grabbed, and off they went, all four of them. However, as one as one critic pointed out, is Harry's new book, which is expected to throw the mud again, is coming out in a little while, and that will start the whole thing again. So this is a temporary lull by the look of things. I can't actually see the four of them getting along terribly well.
I think they're just being civilized with each other
because of the funeral. Yeah. As indeed often happens in many families.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's a temporary reconciliation, but all the old things that parted them in the first place remain, and they remain parted. But I'm afraid is Meghan Markle is somebody of whom I am deeply suspicious. Having spent a lot of time in the United States and had something to do, a little bit to do with the film industry there, Hollywood has its own rules, and they don't follow any others. I mean, it's very uncivilized, actually, but because it's aimed at one another, film star against film star and so on, is that nobody bothers to do a serious analysis of it. They just accept what it is. And I think that she is the queen of that, that Harry is not. And that as we go on, we'll find that the pair of them are under stress, which they wouldn't have been if they'd have decided to take the royal path. But there we are.
Is Meghan Markle probably one of the most hated royals besides Prince Andrew?
Yeah, I understand that she is. Yeah,
she's got to be in second place.
Well, everybody tends to forget about Andrew now. I see that he. What did he do at the cathedral or at Balmoral?
I'm not sure.
He did something. I forgot what it was. Just a little gesture. Which said, welcome back into the family. So many flowers, so many tears, so many memories. The flowers arriving outside Buckingham Palace have to be cleared every so often because they are clogging the entrance, and they're being laid in a green park. And one of the BBC commentators who's floating around and who walked up and through Green Park said that the floral display from all the flowers that have been taken over there was breathtaking. It was shattering. So many people laying flowers outside Buckingham Palace alone. And this has been replicated outside Balmoral, outside, I think, Holyrood House, and many other places around the country. Max, are you moved on these occasions to go and lay flowers?
No.
Nor me. I must confess, I find it a bit odd.
I saw pictures of people crying at Buckingham Palace whilst laying the flowers. I'm like, why? You had no relation to it. Sure, she was the queen. I couldn't quite understand why people
Well,
were crying about
yeah,
it.
I mean, you've got to be very careful when you go. She's the queen. What do you mean, Bush, by the queen?
She was the queen. I
Yeah.
don't mean anything else by that.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah. But I mean, what was her role in the governance of this country?
Head of state,
What is the head of state?
the head of the country.
Yes, that's right. So, if in fact you say stop calling her the queen and think of the head of state, it is that the feeling for many heads of state in many countries is the same. I mean, I hate to pick on another controversial figure, but I mean, one of the similar outgoings of emotion for a while was Evita in South America, where the people felt an affinity for her. No, I can understand people being upset by the Queen going. Having said that, I actually am a bit dispassionate about it myself, and I think you are. But it is incumbent upon people like you and I, if we're dispassionate about it, is to realise the role that the monarch plays. And in a constitutional monarchy, it is very important. People dismiss it and say, "Oh, she has no power." Well, she does. She does have power. And in fact, although one wouldn't expect it, she can say no. She can actually decide that she will not approve certain things. And all in all, as anything that is passed, any legislation that's passed, does need royal assent. It needs the approval of royalty. Now, our system is such as that by the time it reaches her, that any dissent is dealt with before it becomes law. But why do you think that the Prime Minister goes and sees her once a week?
Because she's the head of state. I don't really know. I've never really looked into the monarchy.
No,
because to be honest, it's going to sound rude. I just
I've
never really been a big fan of the monarchy. I respect the Queen personally, but as I've said many times before, she was even ill in the first place. I think she will be the last good monarch. I don't think there will be another that comes after her. Certainly not in my lifetime.
Are you talking about the system staying the way it is, or the system will change?
I think the system will change for the worse.
Yes, it will. If we tamper, I mean, the evidence is overwhelming that settled government and governance comes under a constitutional monarchy. And I've just cited some of the countries: Norway, Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands. Those are just a few of them. And then there are others that are slightly different, such as Spain.
Well, you know what I'm nervous for? If I were to be going to the funeral, which I'm not sure I am, there's going to be a million people there.
Yes.
First of all, it's going to be horrible pain to get there. But second of all, what with how many people and how many important figures are going to be there, that is probably a very likely target for some sort of terrorist attack.
Yes, it is. But then again, you see, if you're in power, surely you have to sit down and say, we need to do this, and this to show leadership. As how much are we going to give in to terrorists? And the more you give in to terrorists, the more power you give them, because then you encourage them to do what they want. I mean, it took us 1969 in Northern Ireland. The last terrorist reign began, and in 1971-72, they started a campaign on the posters. Is 3 years is enough, and in 1985 or 86, they were still saying 20 years is enough, and it's beating terrorism is a very, very difficult thing, but you really have to stick with it. because the more the terrorists gain ground, the more that it's not their demands are that we take over. And can you imagine what the Sinn Féin would be like if they had taken over governments in Northern Ireland? They would have been just as intolerant as the Prods. One of the funny things is that I remember Edward, the younger brother of President Kennedy, Edward Kennedy, extolling the virtues of Sinn Féin at one stage in his very checkered life. And I said at the time, I wonder if he's looked at what what Sinn Féin was suggesting. First of all, they were going to import every Irishman from every country in the world, right? They were going to repopulate. And I said that meant him. Do you think that he's willing to go back and live in Ireland? Because he certainly wouldn't have the power that he'd got right then. But the other thing was that they were going to give everybody a little quarter plot of land, and that's how the basic economy was going to work. So, I mean, it was full of unrealistic nonsense, and they were very good at blowing up buildings and very good at shooting people that didn't agree with them. But they weren't terribly good at setting out a plan, a campaign which allowed them to govern properly. Right, where are we? 9:35 on the 19th, not the 19th, the 12th of the 9th, 2022. And actually, I said, can you? Well, I mean, you're not very old. Well, you're not as old as I am. But casting your mind back, even in your lifetime, can you think, Max, of a year that had more trauma in it than 2022? I mean, it's just been a traumatic year.
I mean, 2021 and 2022 were pretty bad, but yeah, this year has been particularly bad.
Absolutely. I mean, perhaps to some extent, we are reaping what was sown in some of the years you just mentioned, but it certainly it doesn't bode terribly well for what's been going on. Let's just take a quick look. A quick look through. We've got a new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Totally unknown quantity. We know what she said she's going to do. And the first couple of days where she was going to hit the ground running is suddenly she's interrupted by a royal funeral. Now, I did read somewhere that she is going with Prince Charles to establish both the monarchy and governance in all four parts of the United Kingdom. Scotland, or certainly Scotland, barely needs it. It's had its fill, I would have thought. England, of course, will get it at last, but also Wales and Northern Ireland, and that she's going to travel with the new king to establish the fact that we care about them and so on. But by the same token, is the last thing that we expected was to have a new prime minister, and the thing is that the pandemic hit. I mean, in fact, the worst lockdown of the lot was in January of this year, before we actually started to see some easing.
No, it was January of last year.
We were still in a lockdown situation, a pandemic situation at the beginning of this year, if you look back. So you see how quickly our memories push things aside. But then what we've had raging inflation. I mean, there is some predictions that it's going to go to 15%, which is horrendous. I noticed it on Saturday, I think it was, I went into Waitrose just to pick up one or two things. And one of the things I've always liked is their ham slices for sandwiches. I'm not sure whether you were a widower, not a bachelor. Girls, I am a bachelor. If any of you do you mind, Max, if I reiterate the conditions for anybody who is seeking my hand? She's got to be gorgeous. She's got to be wealthy, and she's got to know how to make a decent bacon sarnie. If she fulfills those conditions, I will consider marriage, but not until. Now, I've met many lovely ladies that fulfill two of those conditions, but not one that fulfills three. So there you are. You can look at me, girls. I'll I can preen a little. So I give profile. And now I've forgotten why we started on that part. Oh yes, so talking about what's happened during this year,
with what you were just talking about with Liz Truss, she's had a rough first week as Prime Minister. So she becomes Prime Minister on Monday. She meets the Queen on Tuesday. She has Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday. The Queen dies on Thursday. She meets the King on Friday. It's a rough first week.
Oh, absolutely. But then she's got rougher things to come because now we've got the energy crisis. Oh, I know. I was telling you about the sandwich meat because I make myself a sandwich from time to time, and one of my favourites was the ham slices in Waitrose. They were £1, and in fact they disappeared from the shelves for a little while. And I went and actually spoke to somebody at Waitrose. It wasn't the manager as such, but it was somebody who looked as if he'd got some sort of authority. And I said, please don't do away with these things when they're popular. And they did. They came back onto the shelves at £1. I went to pick one up on Saturday morning. Is it Saturday morning? Yes, it was Saturday morning. How much do you think they are now?
£1.50.
You're not far off, £1.45. Yeah. So that's the sort of thing that is happening because of inflation.
But don't worry, it's only 10% inflation.
Yeah, but yes, right. Yeah. I mean, there's a certain profiteering there. I agree with you. I recognise your point. Although I must say that 10% inflation isn't going to be necessarily reflected by a 10% increase right across the board. There'll be all sorts of other things that will result. And not only that, of course, but Brexit has played on all our minds, and it has been far from a smooth transition. The Northern Ireland situation was a silly crisis that blew up. The EU did not want us to go, and as a consequence have made life very difficult for us, like naughty boys, and being spanked in the hope that what it'll do is it'll turn our heads and we'll say, oh yes, we'll behave, that we'll go back in. Well, believe me, just to go back in will be as much trauma as it was coming out. It's not just a question of one day you're in and the next day you're out. It's far too complicated, far more complicated than that. So we've had a lot to contend with, during the 9 months. Is it the 9 months? Yes, the 9 months of this past year, 2022. Oh dear. Anything else in the middle pages that you've come across of any note?
Nothing in particular. It's all sort of rehashed stories of the Queen. Just mentioning the Queen is dead now. That's a lot of the papers.
Yes, it's. I mean, it's going to be mentioned for quite some time to come, I think. But well, I'll tell you what. One of the things that is a constant is Lewes. Funny little town, irritating little town. People in it can be right prats when they want to be. Well, I'm one of them, so you can see the sort of prat that you get. But nonetheless, an interesting little town. So let's just for the moment pause, as we have done a couple of times recently, to like Lewes. Now, Mr. Max, um,
Sorry, let me, yeah.
where are we? We should be back here. There we go. Tell me, I know that you're not a great sports fan, which is fine, everybody with his own, but the cancellation of major football on the weekend, do you think that should have been or shouldn't have been?
I didn't even know that happened. I mean, it's the 1 week mourning period, so I guess so. If everything else is going to close or stop, then why shouldn't football? It's the sports in general.
Well, sports in general didn't stop.
Just the football.
The cricket went ahead.
Oh.
Rugby went ahead. It was just professional football. Well, no, football at all levels, I understand.
Well, I guess not then. If everyone else didn't bother, then why should they?
Yeah, you don't have any strong feelings one way or the other.
Not at all. No, a very
Right, yeah.
mild opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would have an opinion because whether we like it
You
or
have an
not,
opinion, really?
It's one of the things that I have to accept is that sport is a very important part of the structure of this country. I may not like the way particularly professional football has gone and is made up with obscene amounts of money paid to young men who are only 17 or 18, from which they can buy 10 Aston Martins if they want and park them in the club lot, to the amount of money that is paid on transfers. I think that's all got out of kilter. But the fact of the matter is there are millions who actually go to these games each week and who watch them on television.
One of the things that does annoy me is when people complain about the footballers' salaries. It's like, if you think they make so much and you think it's so terrible how much they make, become a footballer then. Earn that much money. Obviously, there's an age limit.
Sorry.
But I just don't care about footballers getting paid a lot. If you're good at your job, then get paid. They're clearly the football team's making enough. If the footballers weren't being paid that much, they would be complaining that the managers are getting so much and the teams are getting so much. If it's not one thing to complain about, it's another.
Yeah, but why have this high level economy at all right throughout the sport?
Because they're good at their job.
Well,
they can
are you
get
saying
paid
then
much,
that the
they
butcher
should.
on the high street, if he's good at his job, should get the same sort of money?
If he can sell the same amount of products as a football team can, then sure, absolutely. Make as much money as you can.
But does he have the same availability as football to sell his products in that way? I mean, let's face it. I just happen to say butcher, but the more I think about it, is butchers are becoming rarer and rarer and rarer.
I don't think I've ever been to a butcher's.
Yeah, well, there are a couple in Lewis. In fact, Lewis has 2 butchers. Mind you, when I first came here, it had 5. So they are disappearing. But if you walk into a pub here, I can't remember if it's called Richards or Richardson's, but they will offer sausage and mash. The sausages coming from local butcher Richardson's, who are famous for their sausages. So here people play up the fact that these sausages are from the best, as it were. The butcher in the Riverside is also a very good butcher. I can't remember his name. There was, I don't know that it is still named Pryor, but there was one here when it was actually almost next door to where we are now, and he was known as Porky Pryor. The butchers have disappeared, but there are still 2 left, and they are valued. A lot of people prefer to go to the butcher rather than go to the supermarket. And I do notice that in the supermarket, they've tried to almost isolate their meat counter so that it looks like a butcher. There are a few things that are on display. But up until very, very recently, Richardson's Butchers is if you went in, you said to the butcher, I want 2 steaks or whatever. And he would go and get the steaks. And you would offer him the money for it. And he'd say, no, you go over there. And there was a lady sitting in a little booth in the corner. And you took over the meat, in which the butcher had written down how much you owed for it, and you paid there. That goes back to the way it was done many, many years ago. So there are a few traditions that are clinging and hanging on. I equate more money for butchers and less for footballers.
If the butchers could sell it as much, because if the butchers could make as much profit as the footballers, as the football teams could, then I think they should be paid the same. If they can't make that profit, which obviously they can't, then they physically can't be paid that much. What you're asking for is redistribution of wealth.
I'm not asking for it at all.
Well,
I understand market forces, and the market forces are such that, in fact, the demand for football is much less than the Football Association pretends. And in fact, if you go and look at some of the statistics, is if they wasn't covered on television, who pay enormous amounts, and you go look in one of these papers and go and look at the ratings of various programs, football ain't anywhere near the top, right? But you say, oh, there's a huge demand. No, what we've got to start to do is never mind about redistribution, is what are they worth?
Clearly, million,
supported by billionaires, and God only knows where they get their money from. Some of them are very dodgy. Well, I mean, as you well know, Chelsea was supported by Roman Abramovich, who is got his money in very dodgy circumstances. Nobody cared, right? It was football. Ignore the fact that he was a Russian acolyte. And actually, I should tell you, it's a little secret, I suppose, and it's not a secret. The people that I stay with often when I'm in Moscow is one morning we were in the breakfast room, and a call came, and Arkady, my friend, took it, and he several times said, "Yes, Roman, yes, Roman," and I looked at another person there in the room, and they said, "Yeah, he's talking to Roman Abramovich." So there are plenty of roots going back to the Russia of old, but nobody cares. People talk about morality, and you got on your high horse about Charles and the fact that he'd been a very naughty boy, and that he hadn't been faithful to his wife, Diana, and we get terribly, terribly upset about things like that. But we don't care that a football club is owned by somebody like Abramovich, which is not anymore, by the way.
Why is he not owning it anymore? Because people cared. That's why he doesn't own it anymore. So people do care.
He needed to go to war to get people to care. That's why he sold it. He came under pressure because he was a Russian, and he refused to cut his ties with Moscow.
Yeah, and
basically why he was forced to sell it.
Point. That's the point I'm making. People cared and said, "We don't want you." People cared.
Nothing to do with people. It was a very high level of governance. Okay, you can argue that filters down to us as people who are voters, but you know very well, as I do, is that we have really, 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 really got to get stirred up and make a hell of a lot of noise to get legislation changed. Otherwise, if that wasn't the case, is we would now have green policies in place instead of the half-ass mashed policies that we do about global warming and the environment and so on. In fact, because we are now in a mess, fracking is going to be brought back. which actually destroys the countryside. Doesn't matter which way you look at it, it destroys the countryside. So there's a lot of expediency that takes place, and we are used quite often as the butcher boys. Going back to butchers, is they dump on us because we are supposedly the people that wield power, and we don't. Anyway, let's. Where are we? We better. I'm enjoying you this morning. You're turning out to be a bit like you are with Stuart. Let's. It's 10 o'clock on the 12th of September, 2022, and let's get rid of some of these, shall we? So that we don't get confused about what we've actually got ready to go. And now we can take a look at one or two other little things. Maybe that we should. I think that's the same one. Well, I tell you what, we actually had a Jubilee, a different one to the one we just showed. So once again, because it is still the Queen's Jubilee. She died on her Jubilee year. So let's remind ourselves of some of the things that were key in her reign. I forgot to switch the microphone on again. If Max had been here, he would have jabbed me in the ribs and said, "There, stop it, put the mic on." But that was just a little bit of a memory. One of the things that I think that we just I found and I noticed I can't remember which day it was.
I did find.
Oh, there we go. Is something that you like particularly?
Yes.
A drive through the mountains. Right, but you were about to say something.
No, don't worry about it.
No, we don't worry about it. Okay,
That's right.
very well. Let's go for a drive through the Rockies. We won't do the whole thing because it's about 9 minutes long, I think. But just a little spin will help us get the feel of grandeur and that how modern engineering has conquered transport in a far off nation in British Columbia in Canada. And a grand series, a range of mountains, the Rocky Mountains. Let's just take a look.
That's fresh snow up there. It's clean, dusty snow.
It's really hard to be filming in the car here because the road is rough, patched up all over the place, and hard to keep the camera steady. Now that is a rugged mountain range.
The nice thing about being behind big trucks is that that's how it is. That's how I
On Mirador Television,
seen so many motorhomes, fifth wheels, trailers, campers, more than in other years for a long time. Even now, like I said, all around. Many of them are rental. Actually, this time we've seen a motorhome, a trailer, and a camper truck, but there's so many of them out on the road.
Well, there we go. A nice trip through the Rockies, and that's Max's favorite. He likes that. So now we're really waiting for Suzanne from New York, but it is very early in the morning, and we're always very cognizant of that. And I suppose really we should go back to the Queen, and that she has now reached Edinburgh. And today, did you say at 2:15, she will be taken to St. Giles Cathedral to lie in state, and I think it's for 2 days.
At 2:35.
2:35. Okay. Now we're not going to cover that because we are small and we don't have the resources. And anyway, to be quite honest with you, the BBC do a much better job of these things. They're able to suspend programming, which they have on BBC One.
You know what?
They've done nothing but show the Queen's.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but everyone hates the BBC. Most people do. It's not a very liked institution anymore. But after the Queen died, everyone I know, even the people I know who hate the BBC, went straight to BBC News.
Yeah.
Because it just seemed like the right place to go. Everyone went there, even though most people hate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to be very careful about what people say and actually what people mean. Quite often.
Well, my family went to the BBC as a quick turn on the news thing because it's just the quickest and easiest place to go. But it was very strange.
Yes. I'll give you an example of people. In Northern Ireland, we developed the Gloria Hunniford show, A Taste of Honey, at BBC. It became a fast favourite. I mean, it topped the ratings by far. And she would get bagfuls of mail, as one would expect. Then she moved to independent television for an evening chat show. And the fans followed her, but the mail kept on going to BBC. Because people couldn't come to grips with the fact that it had changed. So I sometimes, when I'm looking at ratings, I realize that they are far from accurate, and that you have to take into account all sorts of other things. And quite often with ratings too, is people aren't honest, particularly with phone ratings. For instance, somebody phones up, a researcher phones up and says, what radio station are you listening to right now? And the person is listening to Top of the Pops on Radio 1. But they actually sort of will splutter and so on and try to say, I'm listening to Radio 4, because their ego and their poshness, if you like, their status depends upon when they're playing bridge with their friends, that they're able to talk about what's going on Radio 4. In the quiet of their own home, when they just want to relax, is they go to Top of the Pops or and people lie and cheat and so on. And why should they? I mean, it's crazy. Does anybody care whether you're listening to Top of the Pops? No, they don't. But people behave in very strange ways indeed. Now, I don't know what this is. Let's get ready.
Live from the heart of Lewis, from the White Hart. Starting live is coming Tuesday at 9:30 each weekday for 2 hours. Drop by and join the fun. Mirador Television, live from the White Hart. Join us.
Well, now, Max, we started on April the 17th. And let's see how long that is. April, May, June, July, August, and now the 15th of September is coming up. So that's 5 months we've been broadcasting from here. And we went through trauma in the early days. There were things that didn't work. Still got one or two things to sort out. But certainly now we are beginning to develop. And it's interesting. You've been part of it. Isn't it? Do you find it interesting to see how, because we are so close to it, that we recognize how we've developed and how far we've come in 5 short months?
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly how I have. I still remember the first episode I was on. I was very robotic. I was like, oh, yes, I think this of this issue. This is how I feel. I do not. This is, yeah, I was just like that the whole time. It wasn't very good. But it's just a conversation now. It's very easy to talk and not nervous at all, as I was the first time, quite nervous.
Yeah, well, I mean, any sort of television is a bit nerve-wracking, except for old curmudgeons like me. I've been around so long as I don't care anymore. So I can be as nasty and miserable and mean as I like. And if somebody wants to come and fill me in, so they can. But we one of the things that you've been part of, and one of the things that we intended here is that being in the center of a busy hotel is that as people come past, so we would hijack them and get them onto the show. Now, because of everything that's happened externally in the last 2 or 3 weeks, with the change in prime minister and so on, is that we haven't done that very much. That we did do it for a spate there, and we got some very interesting people on.
We did, yeah.
We
did.
What was your favourite?
I know we've had quite a few on. I remember Stuart saying that we had. I wasn't here the week, but it would have been interesting to talk to him. A guy who designed missiles or what, the space program or something.
All right.
What was that about?
I'm not absolutely sure who that was, but I think that it was he who did the interview, was it not?
No, he just walked in. He was in the White Hart, and you brought him in with Stuart. It was the day I wasn't here.
Ah, right. No, I've forgotten that one. I mean, I thought you were going to say Father Christmas.
Oh, Father Christmas, yes, obviously.
Well, tell everybody how that happened.
So we pulled in these 2 guys. They were both dressed in Victorian clothes. One of them had lots of tattoos, also an interesting guy. And one had a great big white bushy beard. And I asked him, what do you do for a living? He said, oh, I'm an optician, but I do have a job, a second job for 3 months out of the year. I go, oh, really? What's that? He goes, I'm a professional Santa Claus, and I have been for the last 40 years.
Yeah, it took you back a bit, didn't it? He's an interesting bloke. Yeah, to say the least, he was an interesting bloke. And then we had this very nice man from Holland. Do you remember?
The journalist.
Yeah, it turned out to be a small town journalist and a diminishing breed. Small town journalists are disappearing a lot. We are not a news program, so we don't really have journalists as such.
Yeah, we are.
Well, news and information, but I mean, we don't have news bulletins and so on. We tend to look at things differently. We tend to analyze the newspapers. We tend to just to take a spot look at things, and we get our local news by having local people in. We have from time to time Stephen Catlin, for instance, who is first class value for money. The local politicians have stopped coming to us because I think that they're fed up with the fact that we criticize them so much, but it gives them a chance to defend their positions, which they don't seem to want to. Perhaps, of course, they're indefensible. Yeah, we do. But I do particularly. But those are the.
I mainly complain about the major politicians. Local politicians, I don't really know about. It's hard to find information on them unless you know people who know them.
That's very true, and I think, to be quite honest with you, is they would say, well, I'm well known in the community. They're not well known in the community, and they don't make any effort to get themselves well known now. And as a consequence, I think that if anything, that the seats at election time, the local seats, are more volatile than national seats. That they change rather more than they normally would. But the number of people that we do actually have on, and particularly some of them come in from other parts of the world, such as Suzanne, who comes in from New York. We hope. I'm just wondering whether, in fact, we sent that properly.
Yeah, probably best to resend it.
Yes, why don't we? Let's try this, because one of the things that we did a few years ago is we did our travelogues with the use of model trains, and that it was sort of rather a nice way of doing it, because we got a lot of comment from people who love model railways. We got a lot of comment from people who like travelogues. I mean, they like to see what's happening in other parts of the world. And we got lots of comment from people who say, well, that's just a bit different. So let's play this, which I'm only going on a title, but it looks as if it's the way that we those are some of the trains that we use. and some very splendid model railway layouts. But this isn't just a British thing. We actually went to sort of a place like Outer Mongolia and found people who built little model railways to reflect their no. Keep talking, Max.
Sorry.
Keep talking.
I was trying to find the article. I got one from online. I don't know why this has only just come out. This is from the Daily Mail. Google Maps launches new eco-friendly route to help with fuel efficiency on roads. So they're announcing a fuel-efficient map instead of the quickest map.
So interesting.
An example would be from my house to Lewis would take me all through the back hills, through Chailey as well, and that sort of way. But the new fuel-efficient route would take me onto the A23 and then on the A27 because there's a constant speed of best fuel consumption is a constant speed of about 53 miles an hour. That's the best for fuel consumption. So that's the new route it would send you on because that's the best for fuel. So I think that's good. I don't know why that's taken so long to come out.
But is it a download?
Oh no, it's just Google Maps.
Yeah, right. But you go into it on your phone or your laptop or whatever you happen to have. And can you do that on your motorbike?
Yeah,
you can.
I just use my phone.
But surely you can't use your phone when you're driving a motorbike.
You can, yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
you can, well, not use it, but you can have it. So
Right.
it will be attached to the handlebars.
Right. Now, how is that actually coming? Your motorbike.
Join Mirador Television.
Slow and stressful.
Yeah.
And
Which is adding to your stress.
it's adding to your stress. And relying on public transport. It's expensive. Stressing me out.
Yeah.
When I missed the bus, I had to get the train, which is an extra £20 a day.
Really?
A day, yeah. To get the train,
Good God.
to get the train to this morning, it cost me £20, whereas the bus would cost me £8.
Wow. Now that is a bit naughty, to say the least. It is. I hadn't realised that fares were quite that bad because you're only coming about 8 miles?
It's 28-minute train journey.
£20.
for 28
Yeah.
minutes.
I mean,
It's the same to Brighton. From my house to Brighton, it's about 25 minutes by train. It's also £20 a day for me.
well, that's a bit of a shocker for me because
Well, that's off peak as well.
really
No, on peak. Sorry,
on peak, yeah. Well,
off peak
yeah,
is £10.
yeah. But even so,
Pound
£10
something.
is a lot. There is a
It
big
is.
debate, of course, is that how far should the state intervene in fares? Because it is pointed out that
Yeah.
on the continent, fares are much cheaper, recognizing that the people need to use them, use the trains.
Well, people, I don't know what the statistics are. Do more people get the trains and buses in Europe? That's probably why it's cheaper then, because more people use it, so they can charge less because there are more people. Because where I live, especially the bus company I use, Compass Travels, is rarely used. So and it just went up actually this morning. It used to be £3 for a 9-minute bus journey. For a single, it was £3. It's now £3.20. But unfortunately, the way where I live, it's set up. It's very strange. It's an 8-minute bus journey from my house to the train station, but an hour and 40-minute walk.
So you're walking longer than you're on the train.
To the train station, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what it is it goes down a road where I live, Hanway Lane. It's a very small country road, It's very tight. Every corner is a blind corner, so you can't walk down it. So you have to go the long way, which like loops around the whole town, to just get to the train station. So it's not, and it's all uphill. Getting there is not so bad, but on the way home after a long day at work when you're tired, there's only 2 downhill bits. It's long. An hour and 40 minutes it takes me.
Oh dear.
But 8 minutes on the bus, because it can go down a road where people aren't allowed to walk.
Dear. I mean, really, on top of everything else, the transport system in this country needs to be looked at. I mean, I pay £1.70. Doesn't sound a lot, but I come. I mean, because I have difficulty walking, I come to, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, it's about that.
£1.70 for 3/4 of a mile.
Between 3/4 and a half mile. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
And just to say this again, I only found this out recently. Keith, you get a bus pass now once you hit retirement age,
That's
which
right.
is 64 now.
Yes.
But you have a bus pass. It only works after 9 o'clock, but then they changed it recently to 9:30.
That's correct. Yeah. So actually, once again, you see, there's no joined up thinking, because quite often the hospitals will arrange appointments for older people on the basis that most older people get up fairly early, or at least bright enough in the morning, and in the evening is they're flagging. So the hub arranges for early morning calls for the people who are of a certain age, but most of them say, get to the hospital by 9:30. You can't use your bus pass, right? Crazy. And then they send you this threatening thing that says, make sure you keep your appointment in the hospital. Do you know that it cost X amount of money to the NHS last year for people who didn't show? I don't understand how they work that out, but still. And then after all this it actually steers you to a situation where you can't afford it. I mean, it is crazy, absolutely crazy. Where we're going with our transport system, I have no idea.
Well,
But
the government is recently talking about bringing all bus fares to £2 maximum, which I would love, but I don't believe it. If that is true, I would be very happy, because God, does it cost me a lot?
Yeah, I've not heard that one either. But then that doesn't mean to say that it is not
I don't believe it's going to happen, but it would be lovely.
right. Now, let us just go back and show at least a part. We can't play it all, but the first program for Mirador prior to lockdown. So let's take a look at some of the stuff in that, and we will. welcome to Mirador Television. This is local TV, but probably not local TV as you know it. We don't have much cash, so for one thing, we have to do much of our stuff outside. We don't even have a studio. So we don't even have a weather presenter. But we will try to bring you the weather. So when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining. So when I have my walking stick, it's fine. If my hat blows off, it's windy. And if I'm wearing a bikini, it's hot. Not that you're going to see me in a bikini very often. The body's gone, you see. Not a pretty sight. But when it comes to mixed weather, well, we really have a problem. It's silly of us to serve up the same old rubbish that you can see on regular television, so we're serving up rubbish of our own. But I hope that it's nutty enough to bring you back to watch us again. Stick with us, Nutty TV. Now, what's what? What is a weekly look about the interesting things that happen in our town? Those of us who live here know about them, but to a visitor, they might find them very interesting. This is ancient Keir Street. It's said that in the early 1800s, the Prince Regent won a bet by driving a coach and four down it. The Norman Castle in Lewes, though small, is one of the oldest in the country. A wooden Saxon fort stood on the mound until 1080. Then William de Varenne, the first Lord of Lewes, built this stone bailey as his stronghold. A tiny castle for a tiny town. Famous celebrations of November the 5th. They're huge. Almost every one of the townsfolk takes part. He goes way back before the gunpowder plot to Queen Mary's burning of religious martyrs in the centre of the town in 1556. Free beer? Of course not. But this pub, the Brewers Arms, is one of several independently owned pubs in the town. At one time in the 1800s, Lewes had 63 pubs and 17 breweries, and just a population of 9,000, but no free beer. Well, there are the Mirador cameras trying to keep a visual record of what goes on in the town.
the famous Bluebell Railway. 11 miles of track carrying lovingly restored steam trains from Sheffield Park, just outside Lewes, to East Grinstead. The line opened in 1882. As the name suggests, the railway runs through wonderful bluebell woods, worth every puff. This is indeed a rare sight. Southern Rail was on strike so frequently, trains in motion were not often seen. This is the annual raft race down the River Ouse from Lewes to Newhaven. It's more than 40 years old. Raises funds for charity, and contestants build their own rafts and try to sink the opposition. Staying with water, this is a lovely spot in Lewes known as the Pells. It was given to the town in 1603. It's the oldest operating swimming water pool in Britain. Lewes has several charming and interesting cafes, despite the presence of dull, uninteresting chain cafes in the town. The Ports boast the best breakfast, and it's certainly very, very good. I can attest to that. Then there's the Runaway. Despite attempts by the rapacious railway barons to shut it, this bistro has been on Lewes Station for more than 30 years. Famous for its bacon sandwiches, Princess Di once stopped by for one. My favourite spot, especially at 6 o'clock on a summer morning, is the Priory. The building started in 1084, just 18 years after the Norman invasion. The Priory withstood the Battle of Lewes in 1264 and raids from the French during the 100 Years' War, but fell to the vandalism of Thomas Cromwell in 1535, as Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries. This is the Crown Court. An assizes has been located in Lewes since early Norman times and has seen many famous trials. Finally, the stocks. Stocks have been used in Lewes for more than 9 centuries. Some say the punishment is still on the statute books. These are old stocks from around the country, but Lewes's stocks still sit in the grounds of the castle. Lots more interesting places in Lewes. If you live here, enjoy exploring. If you're a visitor, take a tour. We're rich in history. Oh, Jenny, what have you been up to?
Yeah, what's on then? Well, it may be a bit of fun, but what the heck? Anything else you want to know about what's going on in Lewes? There's a very good local publication, Viva Lewes, jam-packed full of information of places, events, and the happenings in this little town. Okay, time for my pal Jenry.
Down, I'll leave you alone. Trust him all in now, 'cause he's the light. He'll lead your way through darkest of times. He'll never let you go, and he'll be there for never bring you down.
very good day to you.
Well,
I'm Edward Stickersquire.
we have to.
If you stay around long enough with Mirador Television,
Push everything to make sure you can hear us. So here we are back again. That's a nice little informative clip, I think, from our very first program, trying to explain what we were doing in a sort of a music way. One of the things, of course, is that nowadays there's very little left of the Priory. There's some ruins, and they do show you just how clever the masons were, because that priory was started in Norman times, and just after the invasion. It was started about 1080 by Gundrada, the wife of de Warenne, the overlord of Lewis. If you go down and you shake those foundations, I'll be damned if you can actually get rid of them. And they actually did survive the attempts by Thomas Cromwell, acting on behalf of Henry VIII, to pull the whole thing down. So that is very much what was an icon. It dominated the town. In fact, there is on record that the prior's men, because he kept an armed force, and the steward's men met in a fisticuffs because they didn't like one another in a tavern, and there was a brawl, and the tavern was more or less destroyed. So things hadn't changed that much. in another 500 years on top of that. But it is worth a visit. And I am fond of saying that the very, very first broadcasts on Mirador Television were made from the Priory. And I would be there at 5 o'clock in the morning on summer mornings. And the only people there were me, the rabbits, and the ghosts of some of the monks. And in the early days, they used to scuttle away when I got there because they didn't expect anybody, and the ghosts don't like to be identified that hour in the morning. But they got used to me, so that when I was there, they would pop up and they would do their thing and not pay any attention to me. So I was very privileged to be able to see the monks in practice down at the Priory. Well worthwhile having a visit, and a great pity that such a monument was pulled down. But what it did do, it allowed other buildings to crop up, not least of which is Southover Grange, which is built with the slate, the marble, that the Priory was built from, and now is still in a pretty fine state, as it sits in the grounds of our favorite park. Our favorite park. Let's just show you our favorite park, and then you'll know what we're talking about. Only 30 days. February, they're only 28. But you just get paid by the month. We don't.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Oh, there we are. You probably heard us chatting, and you shouldn't have heard us chatting. Never mind. He was asking about how he got paid, and I don't blame him. With the way the economy is, everybody needs their money, don't they? Including this television station. We are always open to donations, by the way, to help keep the community television station going, because it is not a popular way of advertising at the moment. We are working on that, working on several things, ways of making sure we can keep going and get the funding that we require. We're not an expensive station. We're not like the football teams that he loves, who are paid so huge inflated prices. What was that little thing there?
What?
There. Oh, it's your T-shirt. Oh dear.
It's a DC. It's a band.
Incidentally, we have made contact with Suzanne. She apologizes. She slept in, and she said she's just going to get herself ready, and she will join us.
I'm not sure if she. I'm not sure actually if she is.
That she is?
No.
Why? What?
I don't know. I think she's having technical issues.
Oh, really?
Give me a minute.
She said she couldn't see the link.
Yeah, so I sent it to her through this, and she hasn't seen that either.
Well, that was the last one that
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, we've still got it's 10:55. We've still got a little way to go, but let's just go over the program this morning, because we started off with a review of the papers.
There weren't many. Was it me? It was just you. There weren't many papers this morning. Not all of them were there.
Well, not all of them, but occasionally you find some missing, and I think it's if they got a late print run. They are late in these news agents, and obviously late to the people who actually do the review. But anyway, the papers this morning were all much of a muchness, all about the Queen still, and the fact that she was delivered safely, if we can put it that way, to Edinburgh last night. There was also some reference to the war in Ukraine, which said that the Russians had been put on the run by Ukrainian forces. And it is the odd, in the Financial Times particularly, the concern and the worry that China has been privately or quite quietly funding all sorts of nations to win influence, obviously, is where the IMF, International Monetary Fund, would have previously lent money. The difference being is that the Chinese just give an open check. Here, have the money, and we're not asking you to change your way of behavior. Whereas the IMF says, let's take a look at where you're going wrong, and giving some indication as to why they have in financial difficulties, and how to change their justify the loan. So the Chinese just say, here's a blank check, mates. You just write it, and so they're very popular at the moment. But as many economists point out, is that this, if you don't reform, is all that happens is that they'll lose more money because of their bad habits, until in the end we'll actually end up with so many weak economies. It will affect those of us who have strong economies, because these things have a tendency to cross use, if you like. I think you're right. I don't think that we're going to get Suzanne this morning, which is a great pity. But there you go. It is the best laid plans of mice and men. We'll try to get her later in the week if we can. But we are now running into 10:59. It's almost 11 o'clock. And I think that we will be saying toodle pip in a minute or two. But in the sports, the cricket world is up in arms because England were cruising to victory when the umpires called for bad light and stopped the match. So it became a draw. So I think the series ends 1-1 all, 1 drawn. So there we go. But at least the cricketers were back on form, back into the winning ways again. There was no football on the weekend out of respect for Her Majesty, her death, her funeral. Although there were other sports played, but none of the stature and magnitude of the football world. So that's it for today. It's a bit mishy-mashy, I'm afraid. We apologise for that, but as with a lot of things which are now going to go wrong in the home because of this electricity thing, we're going to have to say goodbye, and sorry that we were a bit late this morning. Okay, Max, you got a final word?
No. Sorry, I've not been myself this morning. I will say that. Been a stressful week. Hopefully next week and the rest of this week I'll be doing a little bit better.
Right, yeah. Well, there we are. From a stressed out Max to me, usual laid back loudmouth that I am, is I hope that between us we've kept you at least awake, if not amused, and if not informed. But tomorrow we will be back at the same time, 8:30. Those of you who are really bright and breezy, at 7:30 we have Rouser Radio for 3/4 of an hour before we go on the air with our television service, with Mirador Television. So join us tomorrow, and we'll bring you up to date with the latest. We have, by the way, if anything dramatic, really dramatic happened to the royal family during this period of mourning and preparing for the funeral, we have the facility to be able to come on and talk to you, which we obviously would. But if you hear nothing from us, then everything is going according to plan. Right, yeah. We'll say goodbye and say toodle pip.
Toodle pip.
Toodle pip is now up for this end.